Hi, everybody. Hey, Ed Duclos here, and another of our conversation series. This is with Jay Garish. Jay was early to Tour Builder, and he took over Tour Builder, I believe, a Google app which was in beta, and now they have progressed to something else. So Jay is here to share the something else with us. Hey, Jay.
Yeah, hi everybody. So previously, Tour Builder was a really great way to sort of create an interactive style presentation, whether you were doing it for the kids or having the kids create it. And what it would do is it could be exported to Google Earth and have the kids sort of take you on sort of a tour across different locations. It's fun to look at. It's similar to a Google Slides presentation, but since they're getting rid of Google Tour Builder, they're sort of adding these features into Google Earth. So do you mind if I present my screen and walk
Not
you?
at all. That would be fantastic.
All right, cool. So I'm going to share my tab and I'm going to take us into Google Earth. And so when you get to Google Earth, you'll sort of have this screen. You just press launch and you'll get sent in. So when you get into Google Earth and what's its launch, I got launched over Pennsylvania, and you can sort of scroll in and out using the way you would scroll up and down a page. So when you scroll down, you go out, scroll up, you'd go in. And you can zoom in really, really closely and see some places. So let's go to New York, for example. So I'm now in Manhattan. And let's say, for example, I want to have the kids just explore around to get used to it. So there's a lot of different things you can do. If you double click, you can sort of play around and get a cool sort of view, which gives you sort of the look of the city, which I think is really neat. You can click this little stick figure down here, which will drop you into the streets, and you'll actually get a street side view. Google, from what I can tell, basically just has cars with a camera sort of pinned to the top going around and driving up and down the street. That can sort of get you these street views, which is really, really neat. And this is where you can sort of have the kids looking at different things around the globe, and you can turn it into activities or have them sort of direct you on a tour.
Great.
So that's the basics of how to sort of navigate Google Earth itself. But when you want to turn it into sort of an activity, you're going to want to go over here to the left sidebar, and you're going to want to click, I believe, this one here, which opens up projects. And projects is really neat because it allows for you to sort of create something that you can follow along with. So let's say, for example, you want to start up a project that you want kids to look at. Let's say I'm creating a warm-up activity, and I want the kids to say, look at the Suez Canal. And I am going to create a project in Google Earth, and that'll be saved to my drive. So what I recommend doing is, if you go to your Google Drive from here, it'll show up in your recent. I would throw that in a folder so it doesn't get lost in the mix, and you can sort of have that in a place that's accessible for when you're going to, say, upload it to Classroom later on. But let's say I'm going to create a project for African imperialism. And so I create my title, and I want to add a stop. So I'm going to search up the Suez Canal, and that should take me on over to the Suez Canal. And let's say in this unit on African imperialism, we're looking at how, the Europeans wanted to conquer certain areas of land, and I want them thinking, why would this be a very valuable sort of strip of territory? So I can create this and add it to my project, and that's going to create a new slide, which is awesome. So when I send the kids this in Classroom and they open it up, it'll take them right to the Suez Canal, and they can look at it like this. So I can tell them to zoom in, zoom out, and that's like good enough as it is. You could say, okay, look, and why would that be valuable? But you can make it a second step forward, and if you edit the feature, you can add some media and some other things in order to sort of make this a even more interactive sort of thing. So let's see, I clicked on here and I added it to my project. Now from here, I should be able to, here we go. So now I have my slide set up, and this is where you can add stuff. So let's say for my slide, I want to include a nice picture of the Suez Canal, so they're not just seeing it from the sky. I could go from here, and add a nice picture. So maybe they can get the hint that ships are driving through it. And here I can insert my question. Why does this seem so valuable? And, you know, hopefully they'll make the connection that it's a small strip of land with water running through it so that they can go through that little strip of land into trade over here. So anyways, that would be one example of what to do as an activity, but you're going to mostly rely on projects as a way of sort of creating these slides. And eventually, if you sort of take the time to sort of create a presentation, you can create sort of a full-fledged sort of slideshow for kids to follow. Now, I sort of made this educational Epcot thing as a way to just sort of provide a couple different examples of what activities could look like. So here's sort of a recreation of what I was just doing with the Suez Canal. I have my question for the warm-up. I have my picture here. But it's been good for subjects other than social studies too. Like I know that in Spanish they study the Alhambra in Granada, and so you could have them look at it and try to have them describe the different sort of aspects of it. Like here, there's a church and there's a fort wall and there's like a palace here. You could have them in Spanish sort of try to describe these different buildings, things like that. And it's really nice because you can, even though it's from a satellite view, they've added these sort of 3D structures. You can have them really, you know, engage in looking at that.
Now, is the student able to go ahead and scroll around on this scene as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can drop them, and what you can do is you give them the view that you would like them to have when you create the stop. But they can also, from there, say for example, if I go back to my slide on the Alhambra, I purposefully made it so that way when I added this pinpoint, what I did was I got it at this angle exactly because I wanted to have a nice shot. But if they want to, they can go in and scroll around and explore and zoom in and zoom out and things like that. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just had a couple more examples here. Like, for example, if you're going to start Heart of Darkness in AP literature, why would they call it Heart of Darkness? You can see from the sky, the Congo is literally darker than anywhere else on the map in Africa. Think about the symbolism, whatever. And then, let's see here. Oh, another thing, if you're a guidance person, you could have them go on a college tour. Like here, I went to UConn. You can get a beautiful sort of look at the campus without having to actually drive up to stores. And that would probably be even better for some schools that are a lot further away too. So those are just some examples of things you can do beyond sort of creating Tour Builder, and you can obviously have the kids sort of use projects to build a tour for an activity. You can also rely on some of the other sort of resources Google's made available. If you go to Voyager, and Voyager has some really great stuff and educational resources especially. And I was struggling when I was coming up with different examples of how to include like math, but after exploring for a little bit, I found this really cool geometry slideshow, which sort of shows the geometry of different castles. And it sort of explains like, why does using the geometry, why do they sort of work as defensible areas? And sometimes even if you find a really, really nice resource, you can even get some additional things in their slides they provide. So here's about one in Puerto Rico, and down here they include a Google Slides sort of using this specific thing, and they actually go through the equation, or I assume, because I don't know math, of how this geometry works for a chemical and how to measure it. So I thought that was a really, really neat sort of thing that you could sort of use as a resource besides that. And then there was one other thing too, which is, it's not the most user-friendly, but let's say, for example, you're a science teacher and you want to show, I think I found one online of the different sort of, they had all the earthquakes in the year 2009 or something. And it sort of showed them along different fault lines, and you could have kids look at that. In order to do that, you can just search up KML files, because that's sort of the format that's unique to Google Earth. And from there, you can find stuff that you can then import into Google Earth, and it'll show up as sort of a tour that's pre-made.
And so you access this through the steering wheel, for lack of the helm, the
Yeah,
icon. There we go. So those
yeah,
are all
exactly.
designed, right? Could you go back just for a second and could you click on the search for us?
Yeah,
In the
of course.
regular Google search. And if you just go ahead and just type in Paris. Now, if you'll notice that what here, they have different things. So the places, that's what we typically will look for in Google Earth. But down below, they have some of those guided tours that Jay was referring to already set right there. So that's an easy way for teachers to go see what's around. Could you also tell us one thing? How do you get this out to your students? So you created the project. How do you get it out there?
So let's say, for example, that I'll just quickly create a new project and I'm gonna add it to my drive and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. So let's go. So if you've already made it, I believe if you click open project from Google Drive, all the ones you create will show up in its own folder because it's a unique file type. And then what you can do is, let's say, for example, so I'm going to back out of this. When you create it, so let's go new project, let's call it Tour with Ed. And I'm going to just quickly add a place mark. Let's go University of Nottingham. Why not? So I'm going to add that to my project and I save it. So that should be saved. So now if I go to my Google Drive, which I'm doing right now, it should, I believe. So Tour with Ed comes up, and this is what I was saying before. I recommend you immediately go and throw it in a drive. So let's say I'm going to use this for US history. I can right click, go down to move to, and then I'll throw that in a safe drive so I know exactly where it is. But then I'm just going to quickly switch over. I can go to my classroom page. And let's say, for example, I want to use it as my warm-up activity. I can go to US history and just add that in there from Google Drive. And it'll actually open up for the kids like they're on that tour. So once that's posted in, it'll sort of open up with those same set of different slides. And so it'll open up like that particular project. So I can just add that in from Drive and it'll be sort of all squared away from there.
It's fantastic. That's great. Looks fantastic, Jay. Thank you so much for taking us through it. Any advice for teachers trying it for the first time?
Play around with it yourself first. You can spend hours wasting time instead of grading just going around the world. And I highly recommend it because the more time you spend goofing around on it, the more equipped you'll be to walk the kids through it.
It's fantastic. Again, thank you so much for your time, Jay. This is absolutely wonderful.
Anytime. My pleasure, Ed.